Sasha was born in the bustling city of Lagos, where survival was always uncertain for families without wealth. Her parents, Rebecca and James, worked tirelessly but earned just enough to get by. Rebecca sold fruits at the market, waking before dawn to secure a good spot, while James served as a security guard at a modest office building. Despite their efforts, the little they made could only cover the basics, and the five of them squeezed into a tiny one-room apartment in a crowded neighborhood. Among their 3 children, Sasha was the youngest and the brightest. Her parents carried great hopes for her, convinced she could rise above the poverty that had held them back. They dreamed she would build a future they never had, but with their limited means, all they could afford was a poorly funded public school. The classrooms were overcrowded, the teachers exhausted, yet Sasha clung to her studies with determination. She believed education was her escape, the key to a better tomorrow. As she grew older, that belief began to dim. Dreams of university seemed impossible without money, and with her siblings already working to support the family, it became her turn. Opportunities were scarce, and she eventually found employment as a cleaner in the mansion of a billionaire named Solomon. Solomon was one of Lagos's wealthiest men, a figure of immense influence and an owner of countless businesses. His wife, Naomi, was admired everywhere for her beauty and elegance, moving through the city's elite circles with grace. Their life was one of abundance, untouched by the struggles that weighed down people like Sasha and her family. The mansion itself was a grand display of wealth. Marble floors that gleamed under crystal chandeliers, walls adorned with priceless art, and servants attending to every detail. Each day as Sasha cleaned, she couldn't ignore the sharp contrast between their world and hers. While her parents scraped to put food on the table, Solomon and Naomi lived in luxury without a single worry. Resentment slowly grew within her. She watched Naomi step into glittering gowns and attend charity galas that were spoken of across the city. To Sasha, she seemed untouchable, living the kind of life Sasha often imagined for herself. Solomon, however, was different. Though powerful, he was reckless, known openly for his affairs and indiscretions. He rarely stayed home, always traveling or entertaining women, showing no regard for his marriage. Naomi, often away for her own engagements, either didn't notice or chose silence. Day by day, as Sasha scrubbed floors and polished furniture, thoughts of wealth consumed her. She pictured herself in Naomi's place, draped in luxury, shielded from hardship, her family lifted from poverty. What began as envy soon grew into a burning desire. Watching Solomon's careless ways only fueled it further, and the longing for a life far removed from her reality became almost unbearable. The gap between Solomon's world and Sasha's own life became impossible for her to ignore. Each day she imagined herself surrounded by the wealth she witnessed, free from the chains of poverty. That longing soon grew into something darker, an obsession that pushed her toward a plan she had never thought herself capable of. She began to consider how Solomon's careless ways could be turned to her advantage. One evening, while cleaning his room, she stumbled upon a discarded condom left behind after one of his many encounters. The sight sparked a dangerous idea. If she could somehow conceive a child by him, she would have the leverage to demand financial support. The thought terrified her, yet the possibility of lifting her family out of poverty was too tempting to resist. Unsure of how to proceed, Sasha sought help from a doctor. To her shock, he refused unless she gave in to his demands. Desperation clouded her judgment, and against her will, she agreed. The procedure was done, and weeks later she discovered she was pregnant. Fear mixed with excitement. This was her chance to rewrite her life. When she broke the news to her parents, their reactions were divided. James's anger was fierce, his disappointment crushing, but once Sasha revealed her plan, his fury slowly shifted into reluctant hope. Rebecca, though filled with worry, began to imagine the possibilities of a better future for all of them. Together, they decided to wait for the right moment to act. Not long after, Sasha stopped showing up at the mansion. Solomon, surprised by her sudden absence, tried reaching her, but her phone was always off. Frustrated and unable to locate her, he eventually moved on, replacing her with another cleaner and burying himself in work and pleasure. Yet, a small unease lingered in his mind. At home, his marriage to Naomi was unraveling. They had been together for 5 years, yet still had no children. Naomi, often away on endless charity trips, seemed uninterested in starting a family. Even when she was home, her attention was distant, her warmth absent. Their conversations grew cold, and Solomon's loneliness deepened. His desire for an heir only made Naomi's indifference harder to bear. Despite his fortune, he began to feel empty, restless, and unfulfilled. Months later, Sasha gave birth to twin boys. Holding them in her arms, she felt victorious. She had done it. Her sons would secure her place in Solomon's life. One afternoon, while Solomon was resting at home, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, he found Rebecca standing there, her face tight with nerves but her eyes full of determination. She told him that Sasha had given birth to his sons, 2 boys who carried his blood. Solomon stared at her in disbelief, then broke into mocking laughter. "What nonsense is this? I never touched your daughter. How can you claim those children are mine? Is she some miracle worker now? Please, if you have nothing sensible to say, leave my house." Rebecca froze, unable to find the right words. The truth of how Sasha conceived was a dangerous one to reveal, and she feared the consequences. Trembling, she returned home and relayed the encounter to Sasha. Listening carefully, Sasha's mind raced. She realized it was time to step forward herself. If anyone could convince Solomon, it had to be her. Fear battled with determination, but the thought of her children's future pushed her forward. With her heart pounding, Sasha resolved to face him directly, knowing that this meeting could change her life forever. Sasha was in her cramped apartment when a sudden knock startled her. She hesitated for a moment, then opened the door to find 2 men in dark suits standing outside. Their expressions were stern, and one of them introduced himself as Solomon's lawyer. Without wasting words, he handed her an envelope and informed her that Solomon had taken legal action against her. Inside were documents threatening charges of fraud and deceit, warning her to stay away from Solomon and his family. Her hands trembled as she read the papers. Fear washed over her, but when her eyes fell on her sleeping twins, a wave of determination replaced the panic. She couldn't let Solomon deny them. These boys were innocent, and whether or not he wanted to admit it, they carried his blood. Sasha sat down on the worn sofa, her mind racing. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she wasn't ready to surrender. Word of the situation spread quickly through the neighborhood. Some people sympathized with Sasha, whispering that Solomon should face his responsibility, while others condemned her, calling her actions shameful and desperate. The weight of judgment pressed on her, yet she held on to the belief that she had acted out of love for her family and her children's future. Meanwhile, in Solomon's mansion, the tension between him and Naomi had not settled. Their arguments had opened wounds that were difficult to heal. Naomi couldn't shake the humiliation of the scandal, and Solomon struggled with the emptiness gnawing at him. Late at night, when the house was quiet, he found himself thinking of the twins. Despite his anger at Sasha, a nagging thought haunted him. What if the children truly were his? Naomi noticed the change in him. His silence grew heavier, his temper shorter, and his eyes often distant. She began to fear that Sasha's children might create a permanent rift between them. Determined to keep her marriage intact, Naomi resolved to fight harder than ever to ensure that Solomon stayed loyal to her, even if it meant crushing Sasha completely. Sasha, however, refused to be silenced. She began seeking advice, asking friends and acquaintances about her rights. Some urged her to go to court, others warned her against challenging a man as powerful as Solomon. But each time she looked at her sons, she knew she couldn't back down. Her life had already been filled with struggle, and she was willing to face even more if it meant her children would never grow up in the same poverty she had endured. The knock on her door that night had opened a new battle. Sasha realized this fight was no longer just about her desires but about her children's identity, their future, and the truth she believed no amount of power or money could bury. The doctor didn't bother with pleasantries. He reminded Sasha of their agreement and demanded his share of the money. His voice was sharp, his expression full of irritation, as he insisted she keep her end of the bargain. Sasha's heart sank. She had hoped that by ignoring his calls he might eventually give up, but standing there in her new home, she realized the problem wasn't going away. He leaned closer, lowering his voice as he warned her not to forget who had helped her win the case. Without him, she would never have received the fortune she now enjoyed. His words dripped with threat, and Sasha felt her chest tighten. She tried to stay composed, telling him she would give him the money but needed more time. The doctor narrowed his eyes, clearly displeased, but after a long pause he agreed, giving her a short deadline. When he finally left, Sasha collapsed onto the couch, her hands trembling. The new house, the wealth, the sense of triumph she once felt now seemed poisoned by his presence. She stared at her twins playing on the rug and forced herself to breathe. Everything she had done was for them, and she couldn't allow the doctor to destroy their future. Meanwhile, Solomon was struggling to come to terms with the judgment. The order to pay such a large sum had shaken him deeply. His business associates whispered about the scandal, and Naomi's fury at the humiliation only worsened the strain at home. Their marriage, already fragile, seemed to be crumbling with each passing day. Though Solomon tried to put on a strong front, in private he was restless, angry, and consumed with thoughts of betrayal. Naomi, on the other hand, was determined not to let Sasha win so easily. She began making inquiries of her own, speaking discreetly with people who might have more information about how Sasha had become pregnant. It wasn't long before whispers about the doctor reached her ears. Though the details were vague, the hints of manipulation intrigued her. If she could prove Sasha's deceit, Naomi believed she could restore some control over the chaos. Back in her new home, Sasha paced the living room late at night, thinking about the doctor's demands. The money she could give, but the thought of being bound to him again filled her with dread. She wanted freedom, not another prison disguised as help. She began to wonder if she should confront him directly, or if there might be another way to end his hold over her. The victory she had fought so hard to achieve now felt fragile, threatened by secrets she could not afford to reveal. And as the days passed, Sasha realized her fight was far from over. The court may have granted her the money, but the shadows of her choices still followed her, ready to strike when she least expected. The doctor's voice was harsh as he stepped closer. "Sasha, I've been trying to reach you for days. You haven't kept your promise. I'm still waiting for my share, and for you to keep seeing me, just like we agreed." Sasha's expression hardened. "I'm not giving you anything. You tricked me, and I've already paid the price. Now you're just trying to blackmail me." His face turned red with anger. "You can't do this. If you don't cooperate, I'll expose everything. The fake DNA test, the bribes. We'll both be ruined." Sasha didn't flinch. "Go ahead. If you drag me down, I'll make sure you go down with me. Everyone will know how you tampered with the results and bribed officials. We'll both end up in jail." The doctor froze, realizing the danger of his own threats. He tried to soften his tone. "All right, maybe we can work something out." "There's nothing to discuss," Sasha cut in coldly. "If you want to stay safe, you'll leave me alone." Seeing she would not bend, he left her house defeated. Sasha shut the door firmly, her chest rising and falling as relief mixed with determination. For now, she had protected her future. Meanwhile, Naomi's anger burned hotter each day. She stormed into the living room where Solomon sat, his face still heavy with stress. "I can't believe you handed that woman such a huge sum without even questioning her," she shouted. "How could you be so careless? I thought you were smarter than this." Solomon looked up, trying to stay calm. "Naomi, please. The court decided already. I didn't want more conflict. I just wanted to settle it and move forward." "Settle it?" Naomi's voice shook with rage. "You didn't even investigate. Sometimes I wonder if you were involved with Sasha when she worked here. Why else would you give her so much without hesitation?" He sighed, his tone weary. "No. Naomi. That's not true. I only wanted to do what's right for the children. They're my responsibility now." "So now they're your kids," she snapped. "You say it so easily, but what if she tricked you? What if all of this is a lie?" "I didn't want more fighting," Solomon said quietly. "I thought giving her what she asked for would put an end to everything." Naomi shook her head, furious. "You should have been more cautious. Now we're stuck with the consequences of your mistakes." She stormed out, leaving Solomon in silence, his heart heavy. The doctor's situation worsened as his debts grew. He had once seen Sasha as an escape from his financial troubles, but now bitterness consumed him. One afternoon, desperate, he returned to her new home. When Sasha opened the door, she already knew what he wanted. "I need money," he demanded. "Even if it's not the full share. Just something. I can't go on like this." Sasha's eyes were cold. "You'll get nothing. You brought this on yourself. If you try to threaten me again, I'll expose everything." His voice rose with frustration. "Is that so? Then I want your twin boys." Sasha froze, her face filled with shock. "Are you insane? You can't take my children." I mean it, he barked. If you won't help me, I'll make sure you regret it. Sasha's tone cut like steel. Leave now, before you dig your grave deeper. You'll never touch my children. He stormed out, muttering dark threats under his breath. Sasha shut the door firmly, her body trembling. She knew he was dangerous and his threats could not be ignored. For days she wrestled with fear until her desperation pushed her toward a terrifying choice. She bought a gun and lured him to a remote place, pretending she wanted to settle things quietly. The doctor, blinded by greed, agreed without hesitation. When he arrived, Sasha was waiting. As he approached, she pulled the weapon and fired. He fell, bleeding heavily, but alive. Panicked, she fled the scene. The doctor, clinging to life, told his wife everything. Sasha's threats, the bribery, the manipulation. When he didn't return home, his wife went to Solomon's mansion in tears, confessing what she knew. Solomon's anger erupted. He contacted the police immediately. An investigation followed swiftly, exposing Sasha's crimes, the doctor's corruption, and even the bribed judge. All three were arrested. Months later, Solomon and Naomi began piecing their lives back together. The turmoil had scarred them, but Naomi's pregnancy brought unexpected joy. The news softened the cracks between them, and Solomon, humbled by his mistakes, devoted himself completely to his wife. Their lives slowly returned to peace, marked by lessons carved from betrayal, greed, and the high price of secrets. Now, tell me, do you want me to end the story here as a complete arc, or should I continue with what happens after Sasha is imprisoned?